want to ask you about Randy Savage, because obviously Hulk Hogan gets a lot of praise for his part in the Monday Night Wars, his part in Nitro, but you signed Randy Savage in late '94. How important was Randy Savage to have in the Monday Night Wars?
Hulk Hogan was like the first domino to fall. He was such a big name at the time. The business-to-business side of the wrestling business, meaning advertisers, pay-per-view companies, licensing, merchandising, all of the aspects of the wrestling business that actually generate the bulk of the money at that time, they all still thought Hulk Hogan was the same Hulk Hogan he was back in the late 80s, early 90s. So the perception of Hulk Hogan in the business side of the community was still very, very high. On the fan base side, not quite so much because of the steroid trial and some of the silly things that Hulk said on Arsenio Hall, and we all know what that was about. So Hulk lost a little bit of favor amongst the wrestling fans, but Randy Savage was still at a very, very high level. But Vince McMahon had decided, and this is what Randy told me at the time, Vince McMahon decided that Randy was too old to perform in the ring. And Vince McMahon wanted to make Randy a color commentator. He wanted him to work as an announcer. Randy was a very competitive, like way competitive person. And brother, I'm gonna show you. Yeah, step into this. Yeah. So, because Hulk was already in WCW, and Hulk and Randy had the most dysfunctional love-hate relationship of any two people I've ever met, other than Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, which is even more complex. But Hulk and Randy had this love-hate thing going on. But because Hulk was in WCW and Randy knew that he could make money with Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan knew he could make money with Randy Savage, and when in the wrestling business, especially at that time, feelings, personalities, like, dislike, love, hate didn't mean anything as long as you could make money together. That's the only thing that mattered. So Randy reached out to Hulk, and Hulk reached out to me and said, "Hey, brother, I got a call from Randy Savage. He wants to know if you're interested." I was in the Detroit airport. I remember at the time I had a pager. I didn't even have a cell phone then. I had a pager, and I got paged by Hulk. I was connecting on a flight, so I ran to a payphone, and I called Hulk back, and he said, "Hey, Randy wants to know if you're willing to talk." I said, "Sure." And I called Randy back. When I called Randy the first time, we had a great conversation. I had never met Randy Savage before this phone call. I never had a conversation with him. And we had a really great talk, and he said, and by the way, I got the Slim Jim. I don't know if you guys know anything about Slim Jims, because it's a meat stick that's spicy as It's actually horrible for you, but it's so delicious, I don't care. I grew up on them as a kid. And he goes, Slim Jim wants to, if I come to WCW, Slim Jim's going to come in as a sponsor. So as it worked out, Randy's contract is worth $750,000 a year, $750,000, which was a fair amount of money back in 94, 95, whenever it was. But Slim Jim came in and guaranteed a sponsorship for $750,000 a year. I suck at maths, but even I could figure that one out. Well, wait a minute. I can hire Randy Savage away from WWF for free. I'm in. I'll do that deal. And I did. And Randy brought a tremendous amount of value as a talent, because he was so intense, and he still had a lot of equity with the audience. The audience still valued him very highly as a character. But bringing in Slim Jim not only offset the cost and made it basically free, but it also sent a message to other potential sponsors on the business-to-business side, because up until that point, we never had a sponsor. WCW could never get a sponsor. And once Randy came in and Slim Jim came in, About a year later, we had Napa, it's an auto parts. We had a lot of advertisers and sponsors that we, up until that point, couldn't even get to pick up the phone. So Randy and Slim Jim kind of knocked the door down and made it acceptable for other sponsors to at least consider spending money in WCW. So much like Hulk Hogan, yes, he affected the audience and the perception of WCW, but he had a much bigger impact on the business side of the wrestling business than he did on the consumer side of the wrestling business. Randy Savage, much the same.
And, so I think it was like in '97, Randy Savage's contract was up in WCW. There's a lot of stories that maybe he talked to Vince McMahon. There was an idea that he might go back there. Were you concerned that he might go back? Did you think that was possible that he would leave?
I don't know if that's true. It may have been a rumor. And there may very well, because, a lot of guys maintained a relationship with Vince McMahon. And, Vince was all business. Vince was the kind of guy, he is the kind of guy, that he doesn't, obviously, he hired me after all the that I did to him. But Vince is the kind of guy, is if it makes business sense, he doesn't really care what happened in the past. If it makes sense business-wise today, he'll have a conversation. So there's a possibility that Randy may have talked to Vince and vice versa. I don't think that that's true, because Randy was very committed. He liked WCW. He liked the schedule. He didn't want to be on the road 300 days a year. He liked the fact that he was featured in the ring as a major player. There was a lot of, and he was making great money at the time. So he was pretty happy. So I really wasn't at all concerned.
And I mean, at one point you guys end up bringing in Elizabeth, who at that point was his ex-wife. I mean, you hear all these stories about him and Elizabeth from when they were together. Was that a tough sell to bring her in with him, or did he suggest it? How did you end up bringing her?
He suggested it. Actually, Hulk suggested it for Hulk, because I had more of a relationship with Hulk than I did with Randy at that point. Hulk, I think he was the one that introduced the possibility on behalf of Randy and Liz. Like Randy and Liz and Hulk got together. They decided, yeah, this would be fun. And then Hulk approached me. I said, cool, let me talk to Randy. Then I followed up with Randy, and then I followed up with Liz, and realized everybody was on board. There was no, my fear was, you would expect, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to bring this guy's ex. First of all, Randy was crazy to begin with when it came to Liz. Like, you've all heard the stories. I'm not going to go into them here. They're not my stories to tell. But Randy was protective, like a psychopath about Liz. And I didn't want any of that. It's like, I don't need that headache. I got enough already. And I was a little concerned, but I talked to Randy, and my impression was that Randy, their relationship went from husband and wife being overprotective, insanely jealous, all that craziness. I think Randy looked at Liz almost like a little sister at that point. He was very protective of her, but not in a jealous ex-husband way, more in a, okay, if we're going to bring her in here, do not take advantage of her, do not abuse her, do not treat her like crap. Treat her with respect. And I could deal with that. That didn't scare me at all. So I talked to Hulk first, I talked to Randy second, talked to Liz, and went, this could be good. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of history just walking through the door. It gives me something to work with creatively.
And just a morbid curiosity, Randy Savage is one of the only people that Vince McMahon never brought back. Why do you think that is?
You all know.
Do you believe what people say?
I don't believe anything unless I see it with my own eyes. Seriously. And I think the world would be a better place, by the way, in every aspect of all of our lives if you only believe things that you actually experienced or saw firsthand. Because the rumors, the innuendos, the stories, it can be very, very hurtful and detrimental to business, to relationships, to individuals. So early on, I was like, if I don't see it, it didn't happen. I don't know.